Your Excellencies, Presidents, Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Democracy is facing its most serious test in generations. From established democracies who are struggling with polarization to aspiring democracies battling authoritarian backsliding, the promise that democratic governance delivers prosperity, security, and justice is being questioned worldwide. This crisis emerges from several sources. The performance gap, democracies appearing inefficient while autocracies seem decisive. The legitimacy gap, citizens losing faith that institutions represent their interests. And the meaning gap, forgetting why democracy matters beyond material deliverables. Perhaps the most dangerous, and Maria Ressa here talked about it, is the information crisis, the flood of disinformation across our media landscape. When citizens cannot distinguish fact from fiction, when artificial amplification distorts which issues receive attention, democracy's decision-making mechanisms break down. This information disorders skew our hierarchy of concerns, and they elevate manufactured crises above genuine threats while manipulating our moral reasoning with false choices and artificial dilemmas. And this brings me to a critical dichotomy I've been speaking about as somebody from the East. The Eastern Europe. I realize there's a lot of people probably here from further east. But I think we see it very clearly. It's this tension between democracy delivers and democracy is worth fighting for. For decades, we've emphasized very much the former, marketing democracy primarily as a delivery system for prosperity and security. While this is not entirely wrong, this transactional framing has proven dangerously incomplete. It has created generations who view democracy as a consumer product rather than a precious inheritance requiring constant defense. We need to reclaim the second part of this dichotomy. Democracy is worth fighting for. Maria Ressa put it, what are you willing to sacrifice for freedom? Not just because it delivers, but because of what it represents, human dignity, freedom, and self-determination. Democracy is valuable in itself, not merely as a means to a material end. And I think that nowhere is this truth more powerfully demonstrated than in Ukraine and in my own country, in Moldova. Two nations who are now on democracy's front line. When Ukrainians continue fighting against Russia's brutal invasion, they are not merely calculating which system might deliver better economic outcomes. They are fighting for their very right to exist as a free, sovereign, democratic nation. And when Moldovans resist hybrid warfare, disinformation campaigns, economic pressure, energy blackmail, they're defending their own right to decide their European future. These nations have also gained, unfortunately, painful expertise on the information battlefield. They've experienced firsthand how disinformation can be weaponized to undermine sovereignty, manipulate elections, and erode social cohesions. Our citizens are learning every day in a painful way to distinguish between authentic public discourse and manufactured narratives designed to divide communities. Ukraine and Moldova remind us what earlier generations understood so well. Democracy requires sacrifice. These nations are paying an immense price, not simply for economic benefit, but for fundamental European values, human dignity, freedom, and the rule of law. Their struggle holds crucial lessons for established democracies that have grown complacent. How much longer can we survive in Ukraine, in Moldova, if we do not find the power in ourselves to stand together, to form communities that defend these values that are worth fighting for? I have a 10-year-old son. I want him to live in a world where he can determine his future and fulfill his potential. This is why I know what I'm willing to sacrifice. Do you know? Democracy cannot sustain itself solely on the promise of material delivery. A society that values democracy only on its outcomes will abandon it when those outcomes temporarily falter. Democracy requires citizens who understand that freedom and self-governance are worth defending, even and especially in difficult times. We need renewed civic education that teaches not just how democratic system functions and how decisions are made in the European Union. I think that's very complicated, even though I've witnessed firsthand. But rather, to recover the language of civic virtue and foster critical thinking skills that allows our citizens to recognize when their moral intuitions are being weaponized against them. That doesn't mean ignoring results. Democracy must deliver on reducing inequality, addressing climate change, and ensuring security, and also, in my view, regulating AI. But delivery alone is not insufficient. We need both effective democratic governance and citizens who value democracy intrinsically. The courage of Ukrainians and Moldovans should inspire us to rebalance this equation. Democracy delivers versus democracy is worth fighting for. To remember that democracy is not merely a service provider, but a moral achievement worth defending even at great costs. Their sacrifice reminds us that the European way of life, built on liberal democratic values, requires constant vigilance and renewal. Our task is to honor their struggle by building democracies that both deliver effectively and cultivate citizens who understand why democratic values are worth fighting for in times of prosperity and especially in times of challenge. Thank you very much.